Is there anything China, Canada, and Mexico can do tonight to forestall your implementation of tariffs tomorrow?
No, nothing. Not right now, no.
Right now, we're showing the new American administration that they have a strong partner in Canada when it comes to upholding border security, all while simultaneously underscoring that we won't back down, that if tariffs are implemented against Canada, we will respond. We won't relent until tariffs are removed, and of course, everything is on the table.
Not quite a war of words just yet, but you heard there from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and U.S. President Donald Trump in the Oval Office today talking about the tariffs that he's planning to impose on Canada starting tomorrow. It would be a massive hit to our economy, but also to the U.S.'s economy, especially considering how much crude oil we send south, according to the latest data. Have a look at this. Canada sends 3.8 million barrels of oil to the U.S. every day. It far outpaces any other country that does the same to the U.S. So the impact of 25% tariffs could be devastating to our country, even though we know, as we heard from President Trump there, that oil may not be included in that, at least to that extent. Talk more about this is the chief economist of the Conference Board of Canada, Pedro Antunes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, the tariffs haven't even been applied yet. However, we have seen markets reacting. The Dow Jones closed 300 points lower today. How bad could this be, not only for our economy, but for the U.S. as well?
Yeah, I mean, if we take it at face value and see tomorrow a tariff of 25% applied to imports into the U.S. From Mexico, Canada, and a 10% tariff from China, this would be devastating for essentially North America's economy, and that would include all three economies the U.S., Canada, and certainly Mexico. It's almost unfathomable, and we've seen the markets react. In fact, I don't think the markets really believed that we were going to see these tariffs applied, and then we heard, in fact, that it may be a tariff applied March 1st, only starting March 1st, so another kind of delay, and maybe not taking this at that we were actually going to see this in place. But we're all sitting on the edge of our seat here, waiting to see if this is actually going to transpire tomorrow, and if it does, I think we're going to get a bigger market reaction than what we've seen thus far.
There's also an impact, as we were saying, on the U.S. economy, because a lot of people may not really understand how tariffs work, but if you put this type of a levy on Canadian products, well, that actually makes it more expensive for American consumers. And of course, the goal is to really try and balance out and for them to actually go and buy American. But what is going to be the impact on the U.S. economy? How will Americans actually feel this?
Well, again, with this caveat that it's almost unbelievable that they would apply tariffs at this level for any length of time. And maybe this is, again, just another bargaining chip, but if they are applied, most of what we export into the U.S. is resources. It's oil and gas and minerals and potash and food. All of these things are inputs into essentially the U.S. production process. And the same goes with Mexico. And in fact, for China, it's mostly consumer goods. The impact on inflation would be significant if we did see a tariff on oil. And again, I think it's going to be excluded. This would be an immediate hit to what is very sensitive in the U.S., and that is gasoline prices. And so we'd see an immediate impact on inflation and a longer-term impact on their productive capacity, essentially on their competitiveness across a broad spectrum of goods that they produce, that they consume internally, and that they export to the rest of the world. So devastating across the board if these tariffs were actually to come in place as we're hearing about them, and if they were to last in any length of time.
And obviously a huge impact on Canadians themselves as well. We've got some numbers for people to digest here. Average household could lose roughly $1,900 annually. The GDP in this country could shrink by 2.6%, and 2.3 million jobs are tied to U.S. exports. So obviously those are a danger as well. In a paper that you wrote for the Conference Board of Canada, you spoke about what Canada could be doing and trying and really stopping to try and be competitive on the manufacturing front with the United States. also, you wrote about how important it is to eliminate interprovincial trade barriers. Talk a little bit about that and what Canada can do going forward to insulate ourselves from this type of an impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that paper, really, I was talking about some of the what's the end game here from the Trump administration, and I think it is to essentially scare us and scare investors in Canada without necessarily applying these tariffs, although we may in fact see some of these, and you know, we'll see tomorrow if we see all of them. But it's essentially to kind of scare investment to head south, and we're already having a difficult time at attracting investment into this country. I do suggest that we shouldn't be so focused on manufacturing. In fact, I think manufacturing currently is competitive with the U.S. And a tariff like this may look like what we saw when the currency appreciated by so much back in the early 2000s, where we essentially saw the manufacturing sector getting really hard hit, lost about 600,000 jobs over that time span. So, more of the same here if we do see these tariffs hold. And, what are some of the options? Well, we need to focus on the areas where we are competitive, and that is in the knowledge economy, in the service sectors where we've done quite well, I think, adopting technology. The other piece is, as you mentioned, this issue around interprovincial trade barriers. We don't even trade well amongst ourselves. Up on it because it's been something we've been talking about for 30 years. But one of the ways that we can open up the market here more quickly in Canada is to just simply say, let's do like what Australia did. Let's recognize essentially the regulations across from other jurisdictions. It's called mutually recognized regulations, mutual recognition agreements, I should say. And that would allow us to keep our regulations across all the provinces, but just accept that what others are doing in other provinces is okay, and that would open up our barriers much more quickly here in our own country.
Okay, and we'll have to see if the Canadian government decides to go that way. Chief Economist from the Conference Board of Canada, Pedro Antunes, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate this.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.